Aloha. Hey, today's Warrior Woman series is about Abigail. She was humble and vulnerable. She had a jerk for a husband and she still came out shining. Let's listen to her story, see what we can learn from her. I'm Pam Vinson from Dare to be a Badass. That's the website for the women who want to learn how to equip themselves to be the warriors of today. We want to help women find their voice, find their power, and find their purpose. Our weekly newsletter gives away warrior strategies to assist you in today's world and being all that you're intended to be. Too many times the world tries to press us down, or sometimes we do it to ourselves. But this series and our website is dedicated to supporting you in whatever role it is that you've decided is your warrior role. These stories that I go through once a week are designed to applaud the vintage warrior women that maybe we can get some lessons from, we can learn from them, the things that they did. I'm discovering that they were no different than we were, except that they really embraced their badassness. And I would suggest that we need to find ours and use it today. One thing I always want us to remember is you've got this, and Dare to be a Badass would love to be part of your success. So let's get started. I can't wait. Abigail's strength was kindness and intelligence. She was married to a jerk. She understood authority. She realized right from wrong. She knew when to step over authority lines, and she was rewarded for her humility, her kindness, and her commitment to the town. So this story is about Abigail, Nabal, and David. Nabal was Abigail's husband. She was married to him. He was a rich Calebite. Now, Calebite's another word for a dog. It wasn't a pleasant term. It was actually a negative term. It meant that he was surly and mean. He was very rich, and he owned large numbers of goats and sheep. We're talking 3,000 sheep, 2,000 goats. Now, it was festival season in the town of Carmel where Nabal was shearing his sheep. Nabal's sheep and the workers had remained safe because of David's soldiers. When they'd been out in the field, they actually surrounded them and kept them from being onslaught from wolves, from predators, anyone that would try and steal their sheep. So when David heard that Nabal was in Carmel, he sent his soldiers to say, "Hey, we looked out for you. Now can you share a bit with my men?" Because it was festive season, it was a time when they would dress down some of the sheep and actually have a huge festival. And he wanted his soldiers to be a part of that. And Nabal, being the less than gentleman that he was, railed on them. He told them off and said, "Who are you? I don't know who David is. You could just be anybody that showed up here and said you want something to eat. Forget it. Go away." And then the soldiers returned to David and told them what had happened. David's reaction? Well, it wasn't a good one. When the soldiers returned to tell David of Nabal's response, David commanded all 200 men to prepare and mount up. They were going to attack the city, and his directions were that there will be no one left. Absolutely no one was to be left alive. Now, let's talk about Abigail's response. One of Nabal's workers gets wind of David's plan and goes to Abigail about this. Abigail hurries her staff together. She's like, "Oh no, now what do we do?" And she literally took her staff and prepared 200 loaves of bread, 2 skeins of wine, 5 seahs of roasted grain, which is about 30 gallons. I'd like to have seen what that meal was. Maybe it's like the couscous we eat today. 100 raisin cakes, 100, that's a lot of cakes, and 200 pressed figs. Now, without telling her husband, she loaded up the donkeys, set out to meet David and his men. There was the meeting. She saw David and his men coming down through a ravine over the mountains. She met him before they actually arrived in the city, and riding on a donkey, she humbled herself and got down off the donkey and offered the feast. She apologized. She actually took the blame and said, I should have been there. I didn't hear the conversation. I should have immediately taken care of the food for your men. I'm so sorry. I didn't hear what was going on. David's temper began to cool. They tell me that in scriptures that she was an extremely intelligent and beautiful woman, so I can just see David calming down just a little bit. He told her then what he had intended to do, that he was sending his men in to slaughter absolutely everyone. She pleaded with him and she said, you know, why would you, the great leader of men, want to have this bloodshed on your hands? People will see you then in a way that's less than kingly. He realized that she was right. He told her that and said, okay, we'll feast with you and we won't do this. But then go tell your husband what has happened, how you saved his life today. Well, when she returned home, Nabal was drunk. He is having a huge festival. He was in a drunken stupor. So she waited until morning to tell him what had happened. Nabal's karma catches up with him. In the morning, when Nabal heard the news, he went into shock. In fact, it says he was paralyzed. He went into shock so badly. And 10 days later, he died. King David felt he was vindicated by God for Nabal's evil and rude ways. What a punishment for being rude. That ought to teach us all to watch our tongues. And then David gathered his soldiers again and he sent them to Abigail. And there was a proposal. David sent Abigail asking for her hand in marriage. In 1 Samuel, it says, his servants went to Carmel and said to Abigail, David has sent us to you to take you to become his wife. She bowed down with her face to the ground and said, I am your servant and am ready to serve you and wash the feet of my Lord's servants. Abigail quickly got on a donkey and, attended by her 5 female servants, went with David's messengers and became his wife. She said, yes. Originally married to a fool, Abigail, who would have been a widow and left to fend for herself with nothing, instead was honored by a king, became queen, and was highly respected in her community. She saved the town. She protected her city and her staff by being kind and for being aware of things around her. She worked within the rules of society, and she sets one of the best examples I've ever heard of the power of kind words when dealing with potentially explosive situations. I know it's tough when people are in your face and they're being mean to respond rather than to react. It's human nature to want to bite back when we're being bit. But Scripture tells us that a soft answer turns away wrath, and grievous words stir up anger. So let's ask ourselves what we can learn from Abigail. I have 5 Abigail questions that we need to all ask ourselves. Would you step above authority to do what is right? And when is that an okay time to do that? Then, are your words kind? Are they kind enough to stop a war? Or are your words the catalyst to start a war? There's so much power in the words that we speak today. Our words have the power to heal, to destroy, to make someone, lift them 10 feet up in the air and feel good about themselves. So what are your words generally like? Do they suck the energy out of a room, or do they give someone the air beneath their wings to be able to fly? And then let's talk about where real beauty comes from. Where do you think real beauty comes from? Is it something that you paint on your face? Is it the clothes that you wear? Or could it be the character from within? I tend to believe that it is how we respond to people, how we make people feel, how we use our gifts that we've been given for the benefit of other people. I think that if we get wise about this as women, beauty fades, but character doesn't. Kindness doesn't. Doing things for others in our own personal strength doesn't fade away. And that's the real in real beauty. The next thing we want to ask ourselves is, how can we better represent beauty and strength in our life? I like this Me Too movement that's happening because it's giving women power, but really empowering ourselves to be supportive of one another. You know, as women, sometimes we are the hardest on each other as well as the hardest on ourselves. Maybe it's time to stop that and try to represent beauty and strength in our life and then illuminate the way for others to do the same thing. And the last question I want to leave you with is, are you able to be vulnerable? How might being vulnerable benefit you and those around you? You know, I'm not good at this. I don't like being vulnerable. I guess I perceive that if I'm vulnerable, I leave myself open to be hurt. I learned very young in life that being in control kept me safe, but it also builds walls that keeps people out. Being vulnerable is a new lesson for me. Some of the things that we're going through right now in our family has taught me to be more vulnerable. And you know what? I'm not getting hurt. I'm actually being empowered by the strength and love and support of other people. I just challenge you to maybe try being vulnerable and see what happens in your life with you. I'm so excited about this series and so glad that these women are in the Bible and in our history books, that we can learn from them, because honestly, some of them are so powerful. I think they use their giftings in ways that we'd never even think of using them. So I hope you're enjoying the Warrior Woman series, and I hope actually you're finding some of your own badassness through these women that we've studied through history and through the scriptures. I want to encourage you to sign up for our free weekly newsletter and get your warrior on. There are strategies and tips for home-based businesses, for building your internal badassness as well, and special offers that we do periodically. I would encourage you, please, to take the time to go look at Dare to Be a Badass, the website. It's daretobeabadass.com, simple at that. And look around at some of the content that we have. There's strategies there that will help you build some of the things you want to build. There's also products that we have, there's books that we have, and then there are the links to these questions as well as the audios and the scriptures where I find them, or the references from the history wherever I found the stories. But bottom line is, I want you to remember, you've got this. You already are a badass. You just need to develop the skills to be everything that you are intended to be. Love ya. Catch you next time. Aloha.